Well, welcome to the 700 Club. Israeli warplanes struck Houthi targets in Yemen's capital yesterday. This attack came after Israel shot down a Houthi missile carrying a cluster bomb.
And the IDF is gearing up for a major assault on Gaza City. The goal is to deal the final blow to Hamas and free the hostages. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl has more.
Israeli Defense Forces struck Houthi military targets on Sunday in the Yemeni capital of Sana'a. The sites included a military compound where the presidential palace is located, 2 power plants, and a fuel depot. Yemeni sources say 6 people were killed.
Whoever attacks us, we attack them. Whoever plans to attack us, we attack them. I think the entire region is learning Israel's might and determination.
The strike came in response to a Houthi-launched ballistic missile on Friday that had a cluster bomb warhead, which carries multiple smaller bomblets that scatter over a wider area, making it harder to defend against and more dangerous to civilians.
We continue to impose an air and naval blockade and are striking infrastructure targets that are used to promote Houthi terrorism. For every missile they launch at Israel, the Houthi will pay with interest.
Earlier, Katz said that the gates of hell will soon open over Hamas murderers and rapists in Gaza until they agree to Israel's conditions for ending the war, primarily the release of all hostages and their disarmament. Hostage families and others are pushing the government to make a deal and get their loved ones back soon. But over the weekend, the IDF began bombing the eastern and northern outskirts of Gaza City as the IDF increased its presence in northern Gaza. Tens of thousands of IDF reservists are called up to report for duty on September 2nd. Hamas continues to claim there is starvation in Gaza, despite the fact that tons of food is being distributed by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and other international organizations. Israeli officials say the international media continues to promote a Hamas propaganda campaign. Recently, Britain's Daily Mirror ran a front-page headline to, quote, "Stop starving Gaza's kids," with a picture of 3-year-old Karim Muammer saying he was in hospital with severe malnutrition. The IDF produced medical records saying the child suffers from Fanconi-Bickel syndrome, which causes delayed growth and metabolic issues. David Bedeen of the Center for Near East Policy Research says there is malnutrition and suffering in Gaza, but it's not caused by Israel.
This is an Arab tactic, a tactic used by UNRWA, Hamas, and the Palestinian Authority. We've seen one tactic used very successfully. That is self-infliction of wounds, showing themselves to be suffering, but they are suffering, trying to create situations of malnutrition, of poor medical attention.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Now, keep in mind, the reason the people of Gaza are suffering is entirely because of Hamas. And do not equivocate on this. It's got nothing to do with Israel. Before October 7th, they had the entirety of Gaza. They could have run it any way they wanted to. What did they choose to do? They chose to attack Israel, and it was a horrific attack. And they have vowed to repeat that attack again and again and again. Israel cannot just continually play this defensive role. They have to get on the offense here and wipe this organization off the planet. There is no other pathway forward for peace. And looking at the Houthis, here in the middle of all this devastation and this war, they launch a missile with a cluster bomb. You've got to be kidding me. But here's something to really keep in mind. In the previous administration, under Biden, our State Department said the Houthis were no longer a terrorist group. And they held to that even when they launched missile attacks against our own warships. And they tried to shut down shipping off the Red Sea. They held to that. They're no longer a terrorist group. Well, it's obvious they're a terrorist group. It's obvious that they hold to this horrible ideology that Israel has to be wiped off the map. Iran has that, Hezbollah has that, the PLO has that, the Popular Front has that, and Hamas has that. Let's stand against that ideology. Let's stand with Israel. In other news, President Trump is vowing to expand his National Guard deployment beyond Washington, D.C. and into more America's cities. Gary Lane has that story and more from the CBN Newsroom. Gary?
Some National Guard troops in the nation's capital are now authorized to carry weapons. The president says their presence has led to a big drop in crime. Now he's considering deploying the National Guard to Chicago, New York, and Baltimore. Democrats are calling it unconstitutional. Dale Hurd has the story.
The Pentagon has reportedly been planning a National Guard deployment in Chicago for weeks, as President Trump seeks to take his crackdown on crime, homelessness, and illegal immigration to more cities. Several thousand National Guard troops could be mobilized by September, according to the Washington Post.
Chicago's a mess. You have an incompetent mayor, grossly incompetent. So I think Chicago will be our next, and then we'll help with New York.
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker pushed back against the president's claims about crime, accusing him of trying to divert attention away from the economic impact of tariffs, saying there is no emergency that warrants the President of the United States federalizing the Illinois National Guard. Donald Trump is attempting to manufacture a crisis. Former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel says he does not believe it's about crime.
My guess is when you look at what he did in D.C., he's not going to actually deal with crime. This is an attempt to get the goods through customs. This is an attempt to deal with cities that are welcoming cities, known as sanctuary cities, and deal with immigration.
House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries says Trump has no authority to deploy troops to Chicago without being asked by the governor.
Well, there's been no request from the state of Illinois, no request at all for federal assistance.
It's unconstitutional. It's a direct violation of the 10th Amendment.
Maryland Governor Wes Moore accuses the president of being hypocritical for blaming mayors for high crime.
If you look at the president's budget, it actually cuts funding towards violent intervention groups. It cuts funding towards the bureaus of the FBI and the ATF that are supporting local jurisdictions like Baltimore.
In a post on Truth Social, Trump suggested he could withhold funds to repair Baltimore's damaged Francis Scott Key Bridge, writing, "I gave Wes Moore a lot of money to fix his demolished bridge. I will now have to rethink that decision." While the Constitution forbids the military from performing law enforcement duties, the president can get around it by invoking the Insurrection Act, which allows him to deploy active duty troops over a governor's objections to enforce the law. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Thank you, Dale. 1 week since President Trump announced he's seeking a face-to-face meeting between the leaders of Russia and Ukraine to end the war, Russia says the time isn't right. Mr. Trump said he had worked to bring Ukraine's President Zelensky and Russia's Vladimir Putin together for a one-on-one meeting. This after last Monday's White House summit with European leaders and Zelensky. Over the weekend, Russia's foreign minister said the conditions aren't yet right for a meeting. Both sides continued to attack each other. Sunday, Ukraine celebrated the 34th anniversary since breaking free from the former Soviet Union. International superpowers are quietly moving into the island region south of Florida, raising concerns for U.S. national security. Defense experts, though, believe America has a strong advantage in the region, Puerto Rico. National security correspondent Caitlin Burke traveled to the U.S. territory. She reports how little investment could go a long way against our rivals.
Best known for its culture and beaches, Puerto Rico is also considered by many to be a strategic stronghold, with the potential to give the U.S. a critical edge as China and Russia expand their presence in the Caribbean.
Puerto Rico being geostrategically located provides us, as part of the nation, to become a buy-in to our national security and to ensure that our national assets can be positioned here for deterrence in the region.
Over the last decade, the two superpowers have focused in on the Caribbean basin, Beijing investing billions on trade and infrastructure deals while also establishing a spy base in Cuba. Meanwhile, Moscow has taken a more threatening approach with weapons sales, training, and joint military exercises.
As recently as last November, October-November, major Russian joint exercises were conducted in the Caribbean Sea, where, interesting enough, a nuclear submarine surfaced and it was carrying hypersonic nuclear weapons.
Secretary of Puerto Rico's Department of Public Safety, Art Garfer, who also serves as Homeland Security Advisor, tells CBN News adversaries are getting too close for comfort.
That whole southern area of the Caribbean Sea is now controlled or influenced by not necessarily friendly nations to the United States.
Andres Martinez Fernandez, a senior policy analyst with the Heritage Foundation, points out China could now have the ability to disrupt critical trade routes there.
If there's a disruption in the ability to move goods and even military equipment and warships across them, it can have very significant consequences for the United States. And as kind of the risk of war over Taiwan increases, I think the United States is looking very seriously at what that means for Chinese presence and projection powers within our hemisphere.
Secretary Garfer believes it's time the U.S. took advantage of the geostrategic positioning of Puerto Rico.
We got 2 deep sea ports, one on the eastern side, one on the southern side. We do have 2 of the longest runways in the Caribbean Basin that were used for military purposes as well. So these sites can be used once again, even if at a limited capacity, to forward project from here over the horizon as a means to deter Russian and Chinese overt aggression into the region.
Garfer sees it as simply a matter of investing in and building out those facilities, a move that would benefit both national and domestic security.
Drug trafficking organizations, violent extremist organizations, transnational criminal organizations continue to shift and look for LOCs, right? Because the southern border now on California all the way to Texas has been shut down. They have to see where they need to shift and move in order to keep their business going. So Puerto Rico could fall into that vector or that area of approach into the United States.
As the Heritage Foundation prepares a new report on Puerto Rico, Martinez Fernandez tells CBN News there's an opportunity to restore the territory to the national security asset it once was.
Puerto Rico can play a much bigger role, and I think there's an important opportunity with new leadership on the island and the second Trump administration to really seize on that.
With China and Russia making moves in America's backyard, experts say it's time to invest in Puerto Rico, turning its strategic location into the defense hub the U.S. needs in the Caribbean. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, San Juan.
Gordon, Puerto Rico, very important to the security of the United States. Makes you wonder what happened to the Monroe Doctrine.
Well, the Monroe Doctrine is still alive and kicking, but you look at Cuba, you look at Venezuela, and those countries are clearly aligned against us and clearly allied with both Middle Eastern countries as well as China and Russia. So we need to protect ourselves. I think the bigger issue is, can we afford it? You look at expanding our military right now and adding to this horrible deficit. You know, the biggest problem America has is our own spending. And as long as our government wants to continue to spend at a record pace and never balance the budget, we're leaving an incredible problem, not just for our children, our grandchildren, but now our great-grandchildren. And how do we dig ourselves out of this hole? So anything that's going to add more money to the federal budget, I'm just wondering, I don't think we can ever afford it.